Welcome. If you're new here, I'm Clint, this is Diana, and we are professional illustrators. We are best known for our work with Magic the Gathering and Dungeons and Dragons, and we are the creators and senior instructors with Swatches Academy. And today we are going to be looking at your submitted art and portfolios. Let's go and get into it. We are going to be looking at art that was submitted on the Swatches Discord. There is the video critique submissions. So if anybody wants to submit their stuff in there, you are welcome to do that. We're just kind of going in order of when they were submitted. I'm going to start here with Pedro, going by the name Pitt there. Said, I'd really like a portfolio review. I'm a junior in makeup effects workshops and would like to little by little enter into character design for film and series. I practice a lot, but I feel pretty lost in my efforts. That would mean a lot. Thank you. So we have this image here. I pulled off a link to your actual page there. Right. So here we have this. One of the first things I'll say is character design is quite a competitive sector to get into. So know that it takes considerable amount of training to have competitive skills in that area. It probably is not the thing that you want to be trying to do on the side while also training for something else. And going for everyone, our general suggestion is get proficient enough in something that you can be doing that for work full time, then start adding more skills on top of that. So if you're already training to do makeup effects, then I'd say get good enough at that where you are being consistently employed, then start bringing in other skills like character design. But we took a glance at this previously. What's your thoughts here when you look across to the portfolio as a whole?
My thoughts are, I don't know if it doesn't seem clear to me that you're actually interested in character design. It looks from, again, like we can only judge based on what we're seeing, like what you actually present. And it looks like you're more interested in creatures than really characters or non-human creatures. There's some humanoids, but there seems to be more non-human stuff. There's also 3D in the mix. There's pencils in the mix. So there's kind of a mixed bag as far as presentation and techniques. It's hard to know really what you're trying to do, what you're trying to offer. I think it's maybe too many things. So, yeah, I would think about that. Right now, it looks like you're aiming more towards creature design. If that's the case, then I would just focus on that, and I would leave out the human characters for now. There's also, in terms of it being a concept art, like if you're talking about, I want to do character design, okay, we're talking about concept art, where these concepts are kind of laid out. Some of them, like this one, for example, this is not a character design. This is an illustration. We have some kind of design-y sheets, but really most of this is illustration. So I would think about, looking at some professional portfolios, kind of creature portfolios, seeing how they present their designs to make it more appealing to a concept art recruiter. Yeah, so it's unclear. This is very, very specific. Also, I just want to point out that, like, if your objective is to get work, it looks like you're passionate about, like, these kind of weird things, these kind of grotesque things, and that's totally fine to be passionate about that. There's some artists who are just specialists in that, but just know that it's kind of niche. There isn't that much work for this stuff, so you're kind of niching yourself out of the market basically. There's not that many properties that need this. I'm mentioning this to you to keep in mind as you go forward. Do you have any other thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. So, all those points I agree with. Glancing at this, it immediately strikes me as being a student portfolio. This is a very kind of scattered shot subject matter. We've got some humans, we've got basically regular pencil portraits, we've got 3D, we've got humans, we've got creatures, we've got macabre stuff, we've got grotesque stuff. And it's just kind of unfocused, and it also doesn't feel like you have the industry in mind. What it shows me is you don't really know what the workflow is professionally and what a studio or a client would be looking for from you. And the way that it's laid out, the angles that you're using, particularly the subject matter that you're choosing, really shows I'm just picking things that I'm kind of interested in, but I don't really have the client in mind. And that is one of the most common things that we see with a lot of student work. Students create things still based on their own just personal interest without really pausing to think, who is this marketing to? Like, who is this showcasing my skills to? And there are obviously like horror directed games, like you have Resident Evils and properties like that out there, but they still have to have excellent design. And that's kind of what I'm missing here is, yeah, we've got a strange creature with heads and hands and stuff all put together, but it still doesn't follow really good design principles. And so we have to make sure that we're still hitting on that. We still have to have good shape language, good color usage. We still have to have good proportions. You still have to have something that says, what universe does this exist in? It can't just be weird to be weird. It has to be weird to follow the context of the project, right? It has to fit something. So we definitely recommend, in any case like this, go look at the portfolio of someone who is actively getting paid to design things like this professionally. And what does that look like? What does their portfolio look like? What kind of creatures and characters do they create?
Yeah, I want to point out just another thing, which is a lot of the time students say, well, I saw some guy on ArtStation and he did stuff like that, and he's really popular and gets lots of work. And then they'll pull it up and it's that guy's personal work. It's that guy's sketches or drawings or paintings that he does on his off time. My question is, as if I was a client, would be, can you follow a brief?
Yes.
Can you create a creature that, I have an idea for? Can you make that, creature happen? And so you need to be able to demonstrate that by giving these designs a context. They belong in this property. Right now, they're kind of just floating around a generic horror, area. It's unclear where they belong, what they would be used for, what the cultural context is. So we have that, which is choosing the subject. The next thing I would think about is really, what are you trying to offer the clients? 2D skills, 3D skills, both. If you're offering both, they got to both be excellent. If you're only offering one, then just focus on that one.
Yep.
If it's 3D, then just focus on the 3D and leave the 2D, as a secondary thing. Don't try to paint them or illustrate them. So I would just focus on achieving excellence in one area if it was me.
No, we can recognize like there's some really good anatomy understanding here, like there's some really nice folds going on. There's actual sculpting skills here. That is all what I see as things that you've put a lot of time into. The other aspects is stuff that I just don't see as much time having been spent on that. And that's where you'll have to keep working. Trying to think if there's any further points on that. Yeah, we do have to hit on this. Anybody who's interested in horror, macabre sort of subject matter. It does come up in gaming, in films, but it is niche. And
If you want to have like regular employment, you should be able to do normal stuff too.
Yeah.
Like, or at least more normal stuff.
we pulled up somebody just the other day. I remember offhand the name of the artist, but we were looking at somebody who did similar stuff as this, like Resident Evil, Dark Souls, creatures sort of stuff. And they did that, but they also did like normal night designs, normal animals and stuff. And that was one component of what they did. I'm going to suggest that you also do that because it's going to be really hard to secure enough work to make a living just doing this one little slice of the pie.
Yeah, I would also, like I mentioned earlier, just kind of pick a lane. If you're doing 3D, then just make those 3D concepts awesome, like really good presentation and good renders, good lighting. If you're going to do 2D, drawing, hand drawing, painting, then really focus on that.
So just talking about the portfolio itself, obviously the sculptures totally make sense if you're doing sculptures. I assuming what you're trying to do is kind of offer more for your clients. Hey, I can sculpt, but I also can help design the characters for whatever the project is. What I would suggest to stay away from is trying to do more advanced rendering, where you got the lines here, but now you're trying to add shading, you're trying to add rendering and colors and stuff. And unless you can really sell that at a high level, clean lines are just better. Mm-hmm. And it's totally normal and totally acceptable in concept art for just to have flat colors and clean lines. There's a variety of pros working on AAA properties that's what their standard approach is.
Yeah, I would do that. So I would actually drop this entire top row.
Yeah.
I don't think it adds anything to your portfolio. This one, I would probably drop that as well. I would focus more on, if it was me, these, which are more unique. Mm-hmm. And I would drop this as well. So, that's kind of the takeaway.
Like if you want to do some of these, then do a cleaner line drawing, do like turnarounds of the character so that we know what the full costume looks like. Maybe do close-ups of the face, the key points, key design elements. So we really want to flesh these out. These are too vague to like build a proper design off of. Okay, got to keep moving. Hopefully you find that helpful. So let's take a look who's next. Frank.
Hey, Pedro. Thanks for submitting. We appreciate it. By the way, thanks everybody for submitting. Like it takes courage to put your stuff out there for like a public review, and we admire that. No, it's not easy, and we're just trying to help anybody that wants some feedback.
Okay, so let's take a look at the full portfolio, and then maybe we'll do some close-up reviews. Now, obviously, we recognize some of these. This one you did in the materials class, did that one in the fantasy class. This looks like your newest one.
It's new work.
Okay, this first, hopefully, mini illustrations. Okay. Controlled process, did no 10 pass to set up your lighting. Good.
Good.
Okay.
Definitely improving.
All right, now from the top view, what are you seeing about the full portfolio?
I feel like it's getting there. It's moving in the right direction. You got the right content. You're picking the right subjects. It's a nice variety of subjects. You're not doing the same thing every time. So there's a lot of good points going on here. You're on the right road. Mm-hmm. To me, it's still not quite. It's not at MTG level yet. You're getting closer with every piece, but it's not there yet.
Yeah, I agree. This piece, I'm going to call this one out as having the best read. Obviously, I know that you credit in class, but I think the amount of time and effort that you put into this piece comes through, where I'm not quite getting that from the other pieces. This is Depth Delver homage. Okay.
I really like this piece, Frank. I do. I think there's a lot of things you did right in the focal point area. But then I feel like the rest of the image was not quite developed.
Yeah. One of the things that does get me is that so much of the environment feels half finished. Like we've just got kind of fuzziness everywhere, and I want to say that it feels like you're hiding behind a little of the out of focus camera and the murky water, and so therefore I'm just not really going to define much of the environment. The hand really probably could use more rendering. It's just that the hand to me becomes the focal point. Like right here, we've basically got the middle of the image right there on that forearm, and it's got this loop right around it, and it's an area of really high contrast, but that's not the lantern or the guy's face.
Maybe we could bring the lantern up, no?
Yeah, and
possibly.
It does feel odd that there is a lantern underwater. Like that.
That's all right.
Okay. I would consider just treating it like his hand is being shadowed by the top of the lantern itself, so that most of the light is actually hitting the face and the body.
Yeah.
And just treat it like that part is getting shadowed because you're blocking the light coming up at it.
That way you don't have to underlight the hand.
And that way this can be muted way down. Then the light will be stronger on the face. And then, we definitely need to at least give a higher resolution to some of the area right around the lamp, because there's so much light hitting this.
Yeah, this is getting too fuzzy.
And potentially the seaweed stuff would even be backlit like a normal leaf, where you get that like brighter green where the light's coming through the leaf and it makes it look translucent. That would be a great effect right there, and it would help sell that light effect.
Yeah, that would be pretty. Another thing you could do too is kind of work him a little bit more and adding maybe some transparency to these fins back here, so they look a little bit more, merman-y.
Yeah, I'm not sure that we even need a lot of the canvas out here, because this is...
We could just expand this out.
Yeah,
maybe zoom in closer.
I really feel like his hand can be over here, and the lantern can be over here, and you'd make more use of the space.
You could basically crop it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, we can't go through every... you've got our crits on this one. You did a good job. Okay. Redesigned for an old... Okay. This one... we're running into not enough time, not enough reference. Especially with this cloth. This is something where on MTG you would generally see very well rendered, very referenced. You would see every beautiful fold. There would be all kinds of nuanced colors in that white. Right now the white is pretty dull. It's basically just kind of a gray for the lit areas and bluish for the shadow. But you could build in bounce light coming in from underneath that's warmer. You could have the cool secondary light from the sky itself. A lot of extra color there. The wings, again, it feels like you're not quite spending enough time to really nail some of these details.
Yeah, kind of everything here. The birds, more time spent, a little bit more. You don't have to overwork them, but a little bit more. Be careful about making everything soft. Yep. All the edges are soft, and it just makes everything blurry and not have any power or impact. We're also getting really light in here. Try making that gold dark there so you can actually see the light inside, right? Because the inside is being lit, but the outside of the gold is not being hit with that light. Also, just be careful in general of using the same color all over the place. There's basically only one color. through most of the image. It's that blue color, right? So maybe think about coloring the sky a blue color, like a, blue, not this same blue that you use on the guy.
Yeah. Again, I'm going to pull up a reference of these
like
white
that.
statues that when I look at this, I know that you're guessing too much with the lighting. And what you need is a good sunny day reference. You need something like this.
There it
This
is.
is where you're going to, we're not getting the proper blue sky that we should be. And the bright white from the direct light. And the warm shadow tones with the cool upper planes being lit by the skylight. This is where you're going to get that punch of color, that sense of strong sunlight. It's hard to fake that if you're just pulling it out of your head. So use something like this. Do color sample right off of it. Mm-hmm. You might end up needing to tweak it a little bit, but color sample right off of it, and it's going to get you so much closer. Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm not going to go through. I just haven't even looked at some of these.
Let's talk about the two pieces that you pulled off.
Okay. All right, over to Photoshop here. I saw this one, and I'm kind of about it. It's a mixed bag. Again, one of the things that is pulling it down a bit is just the fuzziness. A lot of stuff just has fuzzy edges to it. It's not sharp. And I'm not saying everything needs to have a sharp edge, but there's too much. And the texture brush, you're trying to get the texture brush to do stuff that you should be doing yourself. Like, this magic should have some kind of pattern.
Shape.
Does it take on the shape of fire or smoke or water? Is it runic? Is it symbols? What is it? This is just whatever shape my texture brush makes. And it's not interesting. So if you go in there and you manually design the shapes of this magic, it's going to be infinitely more interesting than just glowy thing with some little sparkles on it. The other thing is, and I found this really interesting, is that this is much better.
This is like your earlier stage has a lot more impact.
You've got really nice lines here. And I'm going to suggest to go back to this step and I assume that you have flats for your colors the way that you blocked it in here. And you've got your no-tan shadow tone. This is so clean and sharp that a good controlled painting on top of this could really turn into a beautiful piece. And over here, we're getting too murky with it. We're trying to do too much, too much texture-y stuff and soft edges and stuff. There's a lot of even riot art, honestly, that goes through a step like this. This is the way that they would prep the image as good, kind of stylized line art with these flats, with the shadow tone, and then going in there and painting it. Now, I do agree the call to put this glow behind her is good, but you probably want to tone down the brightness of this overall magic so that it is more saturated but not as bright, so that her eyes can be the brightest thing. Because right now we're losing focus.
Just everything is bright.
And our eye is going here, but there's no payoff because there's no design. There's nothing to really read from that location. So consider what you can do from here that would be more of a clean render, where you're doing as little as possible to get the most out of it. Okay, on this one, this is more of a fill the frame with the content. Most of this canvas is not about, I assume this is like an ice wand. So if if the dais was, oh, it's really laggy. Okay.
Do you have things open?
No,
Okay.
it's just laggy. So if the dais was smaller so that the wand stuck out on the ends, it would automatically draw our eye to it because it's the thing breaking the frame. Then you can go down from here. Then you don't need nearly much canvas
The
out here.
canvas, yeah.
Yeah, you can really cut down. Again, it's fill the frame with the content. What is this scene about? This scene is about this wand. Okay, well, we can immediately cut out 40% of the canvas by doing that. And potentially you could even go tighter than that if you just made this smaller. And you could, cut it down to there too, and that's fine. That would be the first quickest thing that you can do to really make that better. Other thoughts on that? The snow is like piling up along the edges, which seems a little odd. Like if you want to have some sort of magic effect, like have some sort of design pattern kind of emanating off of it.
Yeah, I feel like there's a very kind of gentle glow happening. But it would be maybe nicer to have a little magic effect coming off of it to show that it's charged or has power or something like that. I don't know.
Oh, okay. I think that was about good for that.
Yeah. I don't know if... Okay, let's do one more. Okay, Frank says, got it. Okay. Yeah, this piece I think is like a nice study. I don't know really if you need it in your portfolio. Pretty unusual that you would get hired to do something like this.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's a good practice piece. There's some anatomical strangeness happening here. So I would, it's not something I would keep in your portfolio. It's not really at the same level as the others.
Yeah, I agree. And I have a variety of things like this that I did. I don't put them in my portfolio, and I don't think I ever did, because it's just too disjointed. It's like there's just a random pattern in the background, and then there's a second random pattern that don't work together, and we don't really sure like what kind of creature character this is, because he's got like vampire fangs, but he's got like these massive ears, but he's also super handsome, and it's just a bit of a disconnect of what the viewer is supposed to get out of it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to know. If it was like supposed to be just like sexy guy, then we would want to see kind of more of him.
Yeah.
So anyway, I mean, some things we have pieces like that too. They're just good studies, good practices. I don't think they're quite at the level. It's quite at the level of what you have in your portfolio right now. But anyway, I hope that was helpful, Frank. Okay, yeah, you did remove it. Okay, yeah. So you reached the same conclusion that we did.
Yep.
Let's say you're close. Just look at what we said about developing the rest of your images, making sure that you're spending enough time referencing all the things that you're putting into your paintings.
Okay, it'd be great to have a portfolio critique on know what to focus on. My goal right now is MTG, eventually Riot.
This is Alex. Okay. Alex, I don't know if you're here. We're going to give you your review now. I think he's next. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought I'd had that open. Maybe I closed the window earlier. Didn't notice. Okay, Alex. One point before we start looking at these, just setting goal-wise, long-term big goals, always good. Always recommend having those if you're serious about getting work. Wanting to do MTG first, moving on to possibly Riot after that. I am going to... Those are quite different style-wise. Mm-hmm. They do not approach an image the same way. And it takes years to get good enough at either one of those directions to do that job. So, I mean, I've been doing magic work for a decade, but I would have to practice for a considerable amount of time in order to get good enough at the right style of art to be able to do that. And that's just because, like, it's a different approach.
It's a different thing, but he's saying that this is a long-term
Yeah.
goal. So
I'm just saying, like, if you have more interest in doing the more stylized thing, I'd say just aim that direction to start with.
Yeah, but it looks like, okay, to be honest with you, Alex, it looks like you're just leaning more in an MTG direction anyway. Like, none of this really says Riot to me.
Yeah,
So
I would agree.
we're just gonna treat it like, you know, that's the next nearest goal, right, of the two.
Okay, across the board, the subject matters are pretty spot on. This is the sort of thing that I would expect for someone who is wanting to do fantasy art for, you know, those sorts of games. I still have to say, I think you did an excellent rendering on this.
That was so good.
And I still think that if you made more setups like this, that you could start getting work doing that. A lot of things that are working, but there's definitely, it's not at that sort of level that you're aiming at.
This is a complex scene, for starters.
We're not at a stage where there is a single thing that we can go, oh, you're making this mistake. If you fix this thing, that'll take care of most of your problems. If there was, I'd happily tell you what it was. So instead, what we're looking at is a bunch of little things that add together to make the difference. Now let's take this one as an example, just because, like, what we're seeing goes across pretty much all these images. If I can summarize it, it would be things are being half done. Right? Nothing is really being developed to the degree that it needs to be developed for a scene at the level of complexity and impact that you're going for. And let's just give some examples.
I just want to give him one caveat, is that this is for a client, yes? So maybe he was on a really tight time limit.
No, I recognize, and I wanted to go off of that, which is a scene with as much stuff as these have. A guy in a study with bookcases, with a nebula, with a magic effect, holding a prop. These other scenes, multiple characters encountering a dragon in a lair, full body dragon, you know, an entire town scene with a battle going on with flying dragons. That's a lot of stuff to do. And the way that you do it better is by spending more time. Now, that's the problem, because I don't know this client personally, but the likelihood is they're not paying you enough to warrant tripling your time.
Or they just don't give you enough time.
Yeah. So either they're not paying you enough to justify it, or they're not giving you enough deadline to extend it to put in the amount of effort that you need. But that's essentially what you need. Each stage of the process needs a bit more time. Take the guy's character design. I don't know if you got to design him or not, but let's talk about what it would take to make this image better. Right now, his character design is like the most basic version. Everything is as simple as it can be. He's got a bracer on.
It's the most simple version of that bracer you could think of. The jacket is the most simple jacket you could think of. The shirt is the most simple shirt you could, come up with. So we're at a baseline where it's like, it's basically a block-in. The block-in is there, but now, okay, well, is there any design on this bracer? Does it say anything about who he is or where he's from? Does it have a shape language? There's no indications there. Same thing on all these gold pieces. There's a circle and another circle, and this center part is this fabric. It drapes like fabric, but then it's got these pointy ends.
Yeah.
Don't quite know what's going on there. So all these things is like, this is a good kind of first draft of a costume.
You're placing down what the components are, cool. But now, what's the influence? Are you looking at Middle Ages? Are you looking at Renaissance? Okay, in the Renaissance, if they were wearing a gold cloak hanging off of their shoulders, what would the embroidery look like, right? What's the design? If this is gold, how does he put it on? Does it have a latch? Does it strap? Or is there, astrological designs engraved on the outside of it? Every piece needs to be more designed. And even goes to like the books. Even the books are like the most basic version of a book. There's no titles. There's no worn edges.
And we know you can do better because you did it in class, right? You did a setup with books and whatever, and it was much more developed, right? So it's kind of, we need to see that on this piece, on the book he's holding, on the table itself. Is there anything else on this table? Underneath, some papers, maybe an open scroll, something that gives it a little bit more storytelling.
Yep.
So things like that is what we're talking about to elevate it.
Yeah, here we're losing out on, like a lot of texture. It's like, this is one of those places where like we're losing, like we can't make out most of this detail at this distance. So we need other things going on that we can read at this distance. Yeah, this is a really kind of complex sort of scene.
This is so difficult. You're in a cave, which is already a nightmare. I've already had to paint a scene in a cave, and it sucks. And then you have like this one light source, your natural light source, but you're having a hard time lighting it, so you're using magic to kind of light things, and that never really works for me, using magic as a light source, like an important light source.
Well, make sure that you're having plenty of references. When I'm hitting the wall, it's usually because I don't have adequate references. And I've got a folder specifically for group/D&D party images of if there's a group of people going into combat, right? How do you do that? How do you align that? How do you make sure that every character can stand out and look cool no matter what the scenario is? How do you do that? Because that's a complex sort of thing to do. And right now we're not quite hitting it yet.
Usually what they do is I don't know if you remember, we talked about this in class, where generally, even if there's magic, we're going to light them top down.
Yeah.
And that's the best way. And the magic is secondary. We don't let the magic touch all these planes in here. There's no need. We're just going to pretend that this light reaches everything and lights everything in some way. And then that's really the simplest approach, right?
Yeah. The simple thing is basically doubling the time. You're doing more pose sketches. You're getting more references for every pose. You're working out more of the lighting issues before you commit to it. We're running into some like value things where I'm not quite getting the distance between these two that I expect should probably be there.
The dragon is so vibrant that it kind of looks like it's on the same plane with them.
Yeah, it feels closer because of that. Yeah. So, it's a bunch of little stuff like that. So for you, a lot of comparison. Like, get this image and then go get a bunch of other images that have, like, big battle scenes, right? And or complex stuff. And, like, compare it. How do they handle the values different? How are they handling the colors differently? How are they placing the lights in the scene? And you just have to go through every point and see the comparison between the two, see what you can draw out of it. Be mindful of your focal points, and this may be something that is being kind of strong-armed by what the client wants to see, because sometimes they sort of give you too many things for your scene. But if you've got a scene like this, like on this one, there isn't a clear focal point to this scene. Like, this guy's the closest and he's the most well rendered, so I feel like he's kind of a focal point, but he's way off on the side of the canvas, so I feel like for that reason he can't be. Now, this is the clear focal point because everything points here, but there's no payoff here. All we have is just some small silhouettes back there.
Then we see this,
and then I
don't know what that is.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's...
Yeah, that is unclear. Either that needs to be much bigger and made clear, or potentially just remove it, because it's a question mark that's just confusing. Like, now, if this guy was standing here and these guys were all fighting in this corner, then it'd be like, okay, well, here's my focal point. It's this guy. We're connecting with this guy. What is the desired time for a more complex illustration? So I'll answer that in two ways. Commission-wise, the clients often give you 6 to 8 weeks on a commission.
A piece.
Yeah, on a piece. And time-wise, the amount of hours you put in obviously is going to vary by subject matter and by artist. Typically, for like a regular MTG piece or complex D&D piece, we're going to be running 30 to 60 hours. 30 would be unusually quick. I would say 40, 50 is probably pretty normal. 60 is on the high end of normal. And for anything that's like a more marketing piece, 80, 100.
Yeah.
Possibly
Splash
up to...
art's even more.
Yeah. 80, 100, 120. It's going to be somewhere in that range. A lot of splash art runs between 100 to 200 hours. Yeah.
If you want to submit your portfolio for review, you have to go to swatchesdiscord.com. It'll just plug you right into our Discord, and then go post in the video critique submission. So we're working our way through them. We won't go through everything today because there's too many, but we'll keep doing these videos, working our way through them.
Yep. Okay, Alex... Keep at it, because you are producing stuff. You keep producing stuff. You keep pushing your skills. We're seeing that improvement. And
just mind the things we mentioned.
Yep.
Planeswalker is in the higher end too. Not that much higher. That's a little bit. But marketing and splash art are the highest paying, but you have to put in way, way, way more hours.
They pay more. That's the thing, is like people sometimes will read online like what splash art can pay or marketing pieces can pay, and you're like, oh, that's insane. But once you break down the hours of doing those,
it's not that insane.
It's not really more than you get on other pieces. It's just that basically you're doing 3 times as much work on one piece and it pays 3 times as much. It's like, okay, well, that balances out then.
Yeah.
Next one was submitted under anonymous, so we'll just take a look at the images in Photoshop.
Keep them anonymous.
Right. Overall, pretty clean rendering. We're not getting any crazy brushes and stuff. Definitely the first thing that is, I would say, compromising the overall quality is that they're so dim.
Really dark.
Really dark, muted. So here... Like, okay, I'm checking the levels here. Everybody, if people aren't familiar, I'll describe this for just a second.
Do a Control L if you want to see it.
Control L. This is showing, this is the black end of the spectrum. This is the white end, value-wise. All right. So here, if there's a big spike, that means that there's a lot of things of this corresponding value in the image. Down here, there's a spike. There's a lot of things of this corresponding image. Now, looking at the image, I can tell you this is the breastplate. This is the sky, and this is his hair, because there's basically 3 major value blocks.
The breastplate and the face are the same.
Yeah. And now that means that essentially 90% of the image is within the last 25%, 30% of the value range. I know that this is a night scene, but we can't be literal about how dark it is.
We have to turn on a light.
Yeah.
Right? So that's realistic for it to be that dark in a night scene. If you look at yourself in the mirror at night with no lights on, you're going to look very dark. Everything's going to look very dark. But we can't do a painting like that because even our night scenes, we have to light them so that the audience can see the subject, right?
So instead, a lot of times what we do is we still have to push it into the same value range. It still has to be midtones, all right? And then we cheat it a bit by just shifting it to a cooler range of colors. And then we put just a note or two, one of those visual things like the moon, like you do. And that's enough to tell the audience, hey, this is night, but we understand it's not as dark as a real night would be. But that's sufficient right there. Similar thing over here, it's not as much.
No, here you turned on a light on his face.
So we do have some things stretched up to midtones. It's still very dim though. We can still get more brightness out of it. Now, we're not blowing him out. We're not overexposing it.
We don't want to do that. We don't want to push it into white because then we don't get any color there either.
But we could get a lot closer. The thing to remember is that any color is going to be most saturated in the midtones. So like this yellow orange here, you get close to white, it just gets dull. You get close to black, it gets dull. The vibrancy, the beautiful colors are all in the middle. So that's why we want to keep as much as possible in there. This one I feel is definitely more successful as an overall image. The problem with this one is that it feels like it was copied off of a flash photo, which is something that just gives that completely flat light and there's no form to the face. So the sides of the nose are shadowed, the front is lit. And then we get this kind of odd, not quite underlit, not quite overlit. We can't tell where the light's coming from. So in this case, if you liked the angle, you liked the expression, all of that, then we need another lighting reference to adapt the light shadow pattern to the face, but use a different shadow pattern for it. Yeah. As far as portraits go, unless there is a real reason that you need this much canvas down here, say that you have an overlay of some text that needs to go down there, I would chop it off. A lot of portrait art, and you can just stop it near the collarbone. You're going to be fine there. It's not really adding anything.
There's nothing down there
to have that down there. So I'd say just stick to the face. Yeah.
So overall, I mean, I know this artist, also a former student of ours. So you have a tendency to always go into the lower 25% of the value range. Your work's very, very dark. Okay, so this one is a huge improvement because at least you're lighting the face. Okay, but just want you to know that that's something that you have to kind of work away from because as long as you stay down there in that low end of the value range, it's going to be really flat and really muddy. And you're not going to get any clean colors. Doesn't mean it has to be bright or saturated, but just get it more into the midtones. You'll give yourself a little bit more room and it won't flatten out so much.
Yep. This may be a stylistic choice, but something that I do think would elevate these pieces a bit more is more attention on the hair. The hair is just getting, it's almost like just a graphical shape around the head, which to me reads fine as a block in, but it doesn't have the kind of form and amount of detail to equal the face. I feel like they're not.
I would give it a little more attention.
Yep.
Yeah. Because it occupies a lot of your canvas too. Yep. So you're not giving the person much to look at. You're developing just this small area here in the face, and then the rest we don't really get much payoff for looking over here, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Be mindful of how these two are working together, because we've got clear shadow here. We've got very clear shadow here. This is an obvious underlighting on the face, but we have no cast shadow from any of the hair on any of the face here, and that makes it feel like they're stuck on. So maybe you have to invent that. Maybe you have to put in some kind of tone there where it feels like that's overlapping and casting some kind of shadow.
Even up at the hairline.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Make sure you do have some good portrait references, even for like different times of day and stuff. Like,
Look at that beautiful color.
yeah, there's all kinds of great skin tones in there, even though it's a fairly muted image. Great sense of form in that. I came across this one more recently. Beautiful form in there.
Mm-hmm.
Look at that.
Looks really three-dimensional.
Yeah. You can just feel the planes, beautiful, subtle color transitions in that. It's really nice. Now, this was one that is like one of the most successful sort of flash photo lightings that I've seen. Where they still brought in a good sense of form and they didn't wash out the features.
This is a really sophisticated value placement, though.
I'm not going to suggest trying this, because this particular kind of rendering and lighting is like very difficult to do correctly.
I would aim for something more like, what was that first one? Something like heavily three-dimensional. Yeah.
So there's a couple of points on there. We hope that you found that helpful, and you're already doing most of the hard work on
just
these.
getting the features right is the hardest part. You already got that down. Now it's just kind of bringing out your colors and your values. Okay, let's get the next person up. I don't know who's next.
Kurt,
are you here? I don't know if you're here.
Okay, we've had Kurt join us. Excellent student. We've really enjoyed him doing some studies with us. I still say that has such a good read to the piece that you did in the character design class. Any man would be proud to have a mustache like that. Yeah, very good. So, some of this, I don't know that I've seen. Red Frogman. Grung Rogue. Okay. Character for D&D. Grung, okay. I assume that he is violently red in the character design.
He's really red.
Yeah.
It's almost hard to look at.
Right. So the goal, I assume, is like MTG or similar. So what's your thoughts across the board looking at these?
Well, I think, Kurt has a lot of skills and a lot of interests, and that's a really good thing. He's achieving some good stuff here. I feel like the first thing that strikes me about the portfolio, if I didn't know Kurt, and I do know him, but if I didn't, I would think this is a student portfolio. And the reason I would think that is because it's it's a mixed bag of things, where it looks like you're trying a bit of everything. And that's not a bad thing, to try a bit of everything. But when a recruiter is looking at this, or an art director, they're like, okay, what does he actually like to do? What is he actually offering me or bringing to the table? Because they're not going to need you to do all these things. There are some pieces, just right off the bat, I can tell you, that are inferior to some others. Like their bottom row, I guess you push them down there for a reason. Like kind of most of these down here, I would say, are not at the level of everything else.
Yeah.
And I would drop those. Then going up, again, it's maybe you'd want separate categories for the 3D versus 2D things.
Yeah.
It's unclear kind of what you're aiming for, what your specialty is.
That's the thing that immediately hits me. I have served like an art director looking for new artists to bring on. And if I saw this, it would cause me pause, because it's so scattered. We've got a no, hospital room, and we've got a pumpkin head guy, and we've got a gun, and we've got a vehicle. We've got 3D models. We've got hand drawings. We've got character designs. Almost everything is something different, and that tells me this guy hasn't really landed on what he's offering. And I'm also unsure what his expertise is. Because generally, why you see a scatter in a student's work is like they take a class, they make a thing in a class, that's what they did from that class. They take a class, they make a thing in a class, that's from the next class. And it kind of gives you the idea, okay, well, he followed a tutorial to make this, and he followed a tutorial to make this. Right. Now, I don't know if that's the case.
That's just how it comes across.
Yeah. So I agree. Portfolio-wise, I would drop all of this. Maybe not the axe. I don't know. I'm not a big 3D guy, so I don't know.
It depends. Like, are you trying to get 3D work? Yeah. I mean, that's the question. What kind of work are you trying to get? Because if you're saying, oh, I just want to get any work, it's a good way to get no work.
Yeah.
Right? It's a lot easier to really focus hard on one direction. Because right now we don't even know. Like, we know you, but we don't even know what you're trying to get here.
That was 3 months ago.
Okay. So we're seeing illustration, concept art, creatures. This is some kind of creature, humanoid. Okay, there's some concepts for it. And this is an illustration. That's an illustration. That's classwork. Is that an illustration as well?
Okay, personal project mocked up. Okay. Yeah, the main character is okay, but I wouldn't even include the background characters.
They're not adding much.
They haven't developed enough, and he's got anatomy issues. This guy's cool enough. Like, if you want to use him, do that. But I wouldn't bother with the background runs unless you're actually making a full scene. You're doing it in an environment, you're creating background planes, all of that. Otherwise, I mean, you could just do this guy on a white background, and
that would work.
That's fine.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing here, Kurt, is like you're demonstrating some good skills at different things, but I think you need to sit down and think about what you really want to do, what you want to offer. If you really are equally interested in 2D and 3D, then just make two separate categories, 2D and 3D. But you really need to be specific about what you're offering here, what you want to work on.
I mean, you've got the categories here, but yeah, again, with this one, I'd drop out most of this. Mm-hmm. Are you looking to do hospital room, office room sort of concepts? If not, then don't put it in. Only put in the work that you intend to get.
This goes for everything. If you're interested in doing rooms like this, then we should see like several of these different ones. Okay, hospital room, office, grocery store, laundromat, whatever. We should see several of these. But that's the thing. It's like we're seeing one of each. We're seeing one Jeep. There's no other vehicles. We're seeing one room. There's no other rooms. So it's more about thinking about what you want to do and just picking a direction so that you can develop one particular skill set. Right now, I think you're just dividing your time and not developing enough in one direction.
It's the same thing that we've said, which is minimum of 6 images of any given topic to sell the portfolio of that to someone. Mm-hmm. Right now, we don't quite have that with illustration. We've got like one character, 2, 3. This is more a concept.
Because of the other.
Right. So these are like kind of character concepts. A lot of these are just illustrations. A lot of these are too old to be used. They're not up to par with the newer ones. So finish out one of the topics. Either a character design, and you need like 6 characters with their full design sheets and process.
Yeah, well, that's what I was saying. Think about what you really love. Do you really love characters? Then make more of those. Do you really love illustrations? Then make some more of those. Just forget about the other stuff for a minute and focus on one particular direction.
Yep. As far as the actual rendering goes, like just your handling of some of the lighting and the textures here, this stuff here. Like, I know you can paint. Like, that is no longer the main issue. I think that when you take the time, you can really produce some excellent results. So now it's just about, let's be more intentional with the career. And the further along that you get in this, the more you have to learn to say no. And it's one of the most powerful things that you have to learn how to do. Because you're going to get tempted or get offered to do all kinds of projects.
Like random stuff.
Random stuff. Somebody wants you to do their D&D character. Somebody's got some French novel that their friend wrote that needs a book cover. Whatever it is, somebody is going to have something that they're going to request you to do, and you have to learn to say no. Because you need to know what your goal is. If it aligns with your goal, then fine, do it. But if it doesn't, then you need to stay on track and not keep getting sidetracked with whatever else comes along.
Yeah, and on that note, like, you're picking up other skills like 3D, that's great. But
Yeah.
if your interest is illustration, for example, like full scenes, then you got to find a way to bring that 3D into that.
Yeah. That's what I'd say. If you don't want to do 3D as your work, then just let it become part of your 2D process, and that's really going to supercharge that process.
It's very useful.
Yeah.
So anyway, think about what we said, and then hopefully we'll see you in the mentorship so we can talk about it
Yeah.
some more then.
The last one we're going to take a look at, because we're already over an hour in, we're going to take a look at Sandra.
Yeah, so anyone, if you didn't get reviewed today, don't worry, we're going to do another video. I don't know when, maybe next week if we have the time. And we'll keep working our way through the portfolios.
Yeah. Here's my portfolio, trying to get in as a concept artist. Some feedback would be helpful. Okay. So we're not going to review that particular piece, so we'll just open it here.
The pieces
Okay,
here.
we've got some turnarounds. Turnarounds are good to see in concept.
Some exploration sketches.
Exploration, some poses, face, hair variations. That's good practice.
This is basically an illustration.
Yeah.
It's not a concept. Okay, let's go to the next one.
Okay.
Okay, so we have some...
Got like a more standard illustration shot. Some breakdowns of the character, major props. Okay. Guy dripping with stuff on his head.
So these are studies. I would consider these studies.
Studies.
Okay.
Studies. Okay.
Yeah, material practices. Okay.
Okay.
And we have another illustration.
One of the first things that we see is half the stuff in this character design is not character design. So if you are aiming for character design, don't be filling it with illustrations and with studies. Neither one of those really fit. So then we can talk about the actual design itself. What we have to talk about a little bit is the focus and the point of a portfolio. So if you are very professionally minded, you want to do this as your occupation, then we want to address it in one way. What this looks like to me right now is that these are your personal characters. These are your OCs. You've got this own kind of world going on. I don't have any problem with that. But it is inherently not of interest to the industry because it's just your taste, your characters, and it showcases your personal interest.
Let's pull up... Okay. It's fine. No, we like it when artists have their taste and their point of view.
Yeah.
There's nothing against that. But we have to, if we're trying to get into the industry, we have to find some middle ground, right? Some common ground with the client. So we have to find an overlap of where the things we like overlaps with what the industry is looking for, what it needs, what it uses regularly. And as you're coming into this and you're new to, to the industry, to concept art, we also want to keep in mind what is the standard now for people getting hired into the industry coming in? Who is your competition? What are these graduates for concept art? What are they putting in their portfolio? So we're going to talk about all that. Let's take a look at the diagram first, actually. Do you have the Venn diagram handy? And we'll show you a bit what we're talking about. Now, James Gurney made this, and we got it off of his, you can see right there, it says, we got it off his Instagram, and then Clint just added a few notes about it.
So the diagram works like this. We've mentioned this some before, but we've got new people joining all the time. We don't know who's all seen this. So essentially, we're looking at overlap of 3 different areas: your interest, your aptitude, and the market. So your interest is everything that you like doing, designs that you like, characters that you like, whatever you enjoy. The market is what someone will actually pay for. And then aptitude is what you're actually good at, that you can do at a competitive, professional level. Now, what we're aiming for is to be right here.
That's where the portfolio needs to be. Your personal work can be anywhere. That doesn't matter. You can do whatever you want. But if you're trying to get a job, then this is where we want the portfolio to be.
Because this is a place where you enjoy doing it, you're good at it, like compared to the professional industry, and somebody is willing to pay you for it. Now, right now, I feel like a lot of your work is hanging out in the I'm interested or, somewhere along here, but it's not of really real relevance to a potential client. What you have to do is start making some work that is, like you said, a middle ground between I enjoy doing this stuff, also I think you like this stuff too. And
or you can use
also, you can use it. It's useful to you. And that way it's showing I'm here to solve a problem for you. I am bringing a solution. You're creating a game. You're creating a movie, whatever it is, that needs characters designed with a particular look. I like that particular look. So therefore, a lot of artists, though, have a tendency to not land right there. And I feel like you're not there yet. One, you have to look at what is the quality? Are you matching the quality? And then 2, are you matching the subject matter? Now, in order to see some examples, I'm not saying this is the answer and you need to do exactly what you see in these examples. But an example would be going out to like New Edge, concept art.
And we're talking about, we're using these people as these are like some of the strongest students that are coming out now of these big programs. So we're showing you this to see what the standard is now for juniors in rendering, in presentation, in design, and choices of aesthetics and subject matter.
Yeah.
So these students are picking aesthetics and subjects that they know the client can understand. A lot of clients can understand. A lot of clients can use. They can see this in their games. They can see this fitting in with what they have at their studios. Okay, something like this. Clean presentation, attention to detail, nice render, very professional. So another thing you want to think about, and anybody building a portfolio should think about, is how is this portfolio representing me? Not just as an artist, but as a professional. Does this portfolio make me look professional? Does this portfolio make me look like I'm serious? I'm a serious artist. I want to work in the industry seriously. So I'm mature as a person, right? I'm sorry, we have to think about these things when we're putting together a portfolio. These New Edge grads, everything about their work says, I'm professional, I'm serious, I'm ready to work for you on your property. And then you have the technical skills too, right?
Yeah, it comes off of, I am treating this like a professional. I'm treating this like a job. I'm taking it seriously because somebody's going to put their property in my hands and potentially give me a lot of money to do this.
Think about it this way. Some of these properties, these IPs, are $1 million franchises, multi-million, or even like Marvel Studios, it's $1 billion franchises. They're not going to put that into the hands of just anyone, right? So what you're up against is really demonstrating to these people, I can be trusted with your material. I can handle your project, right?
So when we come here, I'm not getting that same sense. This still feels a little... I'm going to use the word, I don't mean it badly, but there is an immaturity to it. The subject matter comes across kind of childish. The colors are just big and bold and bright. It's very not based on reality. I'm not sure what the idea of the designs are behind these.
Yeah, I think you're starting out. I think you're still in an initial phase of kind of figuring out some of those things, like what the industry wants, what you really bring to the table. And so we need to focus on a couple of things here, which is just technical skills. There are anatomy errors here. We need to look into that. These drawings need to be correct before even attempting to render. Okay? So that's something you should focus on, just making the drawings, lines and flats correct. Maybe show an example of someone just doing only lines and flats, right? Very little rendering happening here. And this is a perfectly nice starting point. We do not, you see, the render is not going to make this fantastically, it'll make it better, but what I mean to say is if this drawing is strong already, it doesn't need a render. A render is not going to save a weak drawing. So it's better for you to spend that time on your drawings, making the lines and flats really nice and correct, okay? The second thing you want to do is really try working from a brief. So
I think that's going to be a really big thing for you.
That would be extremely helpful. The New Edge students do that. The Sin Studio students do that. They work from one story, one IP. They don't make up the story themselves. And they create the necessary characters and assets for that story to show that they can actually deliver on a project, So that's something I think would help a lot. And just cutting out the illustrations, kind of, again, like what we said to previous people, focusing one particular area, just making that the best it can be, and not getting distracted with other things.
Yeah, start with always just the quality first. Design kind of comes after that. You got to make sure that just the rendering itself, the poses, the anatomy, how you're handling the lines, are you shading it correctly, all that stuff. When you're doing that, like we said, just start with lines and flats first. If you can't get it accurate and interesting in lines and flats, you don't need to move to any kind of rendering. Yeah,
this is really nice. Like, just aiming for this is better than trying to paint it, at not a high level. So we're saying this to kind of help you focus in on just a smaller set of parameters. Okay, make my drawing correct, lines clean, colors nice and balanced, nothing here screaming at me, oversaturated, bring it down a little bit, and working from an actual brief that makes sense for more clients. Okay, so working on a story that people can relate to, working on characters that are relatable, like more normal, right?
Because most of the time, like almost all the time, 99% of the time, if you're working in the industry, you're developing somebody else's character, right? You're not getting to just design your own characters and insert them into some property. So getting used to getting a brief from someone, an image outline from someone, being able to get that and make it cool and kind of put your skills, put your little influence on it. But that is a skill in itself. And that's one of the things that we run over a lot in the courses is how do you get a brief and make it cool when it's maybe not as cool as what you normally want to do. So it'd even be like, okay, just get some story that you're familiar with. Just get, The Hobbit.
Well, that's what That's
And
what they
then-
do at these other schools. They get a story like Treasure Island or King Arthur, whatever, it doesn't matter. Some story that's really well known, some myth in your country if you're from a non-Western country. Okay, pick a story and really stick to that and make it cool. Like if it was a video game, what would the characters look like? What would the props look like? Put them maybe in a different time period or something, make them more interesting. But it's always easier and more applicable to the industry to do that than making up random characters, making up a random world. It's always like the chance of failure is higher.
Obviously, everyone likes to receive glowing praise, and that's not what we just gave you. But we also want to encourage you that
Don't give up. We're not.
we're not.
The first portfolio is usually not the right one. Like my first portfolio was a joke. It was so out of touch. I didn't know what I was doing. And it's true for most people. Like you get some feedback, you get more information, you get a better idea of what the industry wants, and you keep working towards that, right?
Yep. So keep at it. Make a list of like what you need to focus on, and have a goal of like, I'm aiming for this. This is what I need to study in order to get there. Pick you out some artists that have some art style that they're working professionals in doing character concepts, and go, okay, these are going to be my kind of goals to aim for the next ever how long you're practicing.
And get some feedback from the community as you're working on new pieces. You know, it can be from our Discord or other Discords, but put it out there and get some feedback to see how the pieces are being received, what other people see in them that you may not notice. It's good to get those opinions.
Yep.
So there's a few comments here. I don't know if you want to go through that because we're going to wrap
take a
up.
minute. That's all the reviews we're going to do for this session because we're already an hour and a half. But we'll answer some comments or questions if there's some.
We'll review some more probably next week. We'll try to aim for that.
Yep. So I just had noticed like somebody said I couldn't find it. Yeah, if you look under your art, it is the video critique submissions.
Yeah, it might be closed, so just expand it if it's closed.
Do you guys consider opening a rendering characters class? Yes, we are outlining a class on that. We are creating one that aims to do characters like D&D, Pathfinder, full body standing characters, white background.
Yeah, with briefs.
Yep, with briefs. So I'm going to be going more of a just painting characters like that, posing them, different rendering techniques, that sort of thing.
And the briefs that we sent were so hard. Well, you guys asked for them. People said, oh, well, you know, you only ever give softballs. We want hardballs. We want, like, the hard briefs. So we created some, and then only, like, Haniel did it. So far. I know other people say they're working on them, so I'm sure there's some being done. But we've only seen one so far.
Yeah, in case others are wondering, we made this PDF, fantasy briefs.
It's on the Discord.
That are intentionally a little more difficult. Sorcerer's Duel. These are things that would be fairly normal to do for a fantasy company. Two wizards fighting it out. End of a comically large squat cannon erupts a plume of smoke as a brightly colored bard plays a lute while being shot out to the applause of the audience. Now, I just put in some filler artwork here. Obviously, that's not it. Colorful streamers and tents.
These are just references to get like the vibe of what it is.
So yeah, that would be a tough image to do, but it's also not crazy like for what somebody may ask you to actually do.
You could get an assignment like this for Magic, and then it's our nightmare. We're always hoping we don't get something like that.
This sort of thing, you know, a horde of goblins bursting into a town and setting things on fire and stuff, and it's just, you know, it's going to be a lot of stuff going on. So
Okay, other thing is, what is the first class you believe beginners should take? I guess
Form
it
drawing.
depends on the level of the beginner.
Well,
but
yeah, okay. If you already know how to use in Photoshop or your painting program, I would say form drawing. If you don't know how to even use Photoshop, I would say digital painting basics, because Nino actually takes you through
everything.
how to use it. But if you're relatively familiar with interface, then I'd say form drawing.
Do you have any tips for creating your own briefs for self-learners? That we don't recommend.
No, I mean, that's why... that's the whole problem, is that people innately choose briefs of things that they're comfortable doing. The idea behind it is having to create an image for a brief you're not really comfortable with, and that's what pushes you, because you don't know what you're going to be faced with.
What's the ideal number of portfolio pieces?
6 to 10 for illustration is usually sufficient.
Yeah. For concept art, you also want 6 like projects, but then within each project, you should have like 5 sheets.
Yeah.
4 or 5 sheets of the stages of the concept.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that's everything. I think we went through all the questions. If there's no more, then we'll wrap up and we'll pick this up again next week.
Yep. We do have to make a little plug. If you guys do want to study with us, sign-ups are open for the summer classes. They're starting a month from now, July 7th through 10th. So swatchesacademy.com, you can get it with feedback out there, or you can pick up the self-study
Without
courses. Yeah, which we just put out recently. So.
Okay, guys, thanks for coming. We appreciate it. And thanks for submitting your work. It was really fun to see all the paintings and drawings. We always enjoy it.
Yeah. All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us, and we will catch you next time. Until then, keep drawing.